Day 4, Sunday morning. It feels earlier than it is. It's actually only 8 o'clock, but it's a very sleepy village on a Sunday morning. I've just stayed here. Very simple, inexpensive one night and a pilgrim's meal. And on arrival yesterday, I was seduced by a free beer to Susanna's bar, a German guy who's married a Spanish woman and is made his home and living here. Apparently, I'm whispering because it's Sunday morning. Apparently, the pilgrim season proper doesn't start for 2 weeks in Semana Santa, Holy Week. So there are actually very few pilgrims around, it turns out. Let's just listen to the birds a moment. It's not early for them, is it? Let's get going this way, I think. Catch you later. This is a little village, the first of the morning, this Sunday morning, called El Gorsa, and there are many abandoned buildings in here you could do up if you were so inclined. It might end up looking like that, but corrugated roof in that case. Old stone, it's lovely old stone. And no roofs on these earth and stone cottages. They look more like agricultural outbuildings, don't they? Rather than, I don't think they were ever dwellings, were they? I don't know why they haven't repurposed the stone though, because here's a very good example of, I guess they have repurposed the stone for that. Isn't that lovely? It's one of the aspects. Oh, and look at this arch over this doorway and the doorway itself. Isn't that splendid? And it's triggered something, a recollection from previous Caminos. One of the highlights is indeed walking through these lovely honeystone villages, and of course you think, oh, I could live here. Let's see if there's any coffee. I won't show you every meal, but this is Sunday desayuno breakfast with local freshly squeezed oranges, squeezed by a local, local jamon on tostada, and a nice fresh coffee. Happy Sunday. And there we have it, the local church with the tower, which is mostly for show, and in the mist, the heron's nest, precariously stuck to the side of the apex. Oh dear. Some of us live our lives like that. This way. Aha! 2 crosses. A red cross, which looks a bit like a dagger, and a wooden cross this Sunday morning. The normal Communal yellow shell and yellow arrow, So we know we're on the right path for the Communal Française, as this route is called. So what's the confusion? What's this Red Cross? It's not an ambulance station. It also happens to be, if I am correct, another route called, it's not the Saint-Jacques route, which is sort of Spanish for St. James, I believe. This might be wrong, but it's also, this part of it anyway, is the route St. George. I think that's right. Let's see if this information board tells us anything more. That's a lovely explanatory sign in Spanish. Well, I have to say, Ruta la Fuecara, Brazuelo. We're here in El Ganso, which is a lovely little village, and it's just 2 kilometers or an hour to Castro. Don't know what the Brazuelo is. Off we go this way. Hopefully, after another hour or so, we'll find another coffee stop. There's the wooden cross. It's actually metal, not wood, I think. The yellow stripe, the yellow arrow, and a very Germanic looking red cross there. I expect Baron von Richthofen to appear out of the skies any moment. Oh, that's thoughtful. Dance classes for deer 4 kilometers ahead. That's good to keep them active. Believe doesn't make you free. Have faith does. You let it space to act. Saint-Preux or somebody. Believe doesn't make you free. But faith does. What's the difference between belief and faith? Well, this is very simplistic, so don't put any weight to my words whatsoever. This is my off-the-cuff point I have come to temporarily. Belief is your response to what somebody else tells you. If you know something, you don't have to believe it, do you? Because you know it. But if somebody tells you something, for example, we are all tainted with original sin, then unless it's something you know for yourself, it seems to me that's a belief. You're taking on board something that somebody else has told you. Well, as an apprentice mystic, this don't wash for me anymore. And nodding to dogma, I'm not going to throw stones at anybody's beliefs. For myself, which is the mystic path of the experiential understanding, I say I no longer need to believe. I suppose the alternative is faith. And somewhere in the Bible, in the New Testament, I think it's one of Paul's letters, he very nicely defines faith as the certainty of those things we can't see. Well, we can't see the mobile phone electromagnetic waves. We can't see many things that we take for granted in modern life, particularly technology, but also things from the past. You and I, unless you are an archaeologist or possibly an anthropologist, you do not know firsthand for yourself from the fossil record, for example, or the study of early hominids, the efficacy of Darwin's grand theory of evolution through natural selection. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe in that. I have not got an alternative, and I've got no intention of polishing my silver rock hammer and going on the Jurassic coast to do my own fossil research. No, I do believe what other people have discovered in those realms, but in the realm of spirit, it goes without saying really that I can't communicate, I can't intravenously or intraneuronally convey not my belief, my experience of the numinous to you. And I am no Buddhist, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, in the Buddhist tradition, it's not a question of believing in the Buddha, it's a question of experiencing your own Buddha nature yourself. So the parallel for me, I suppose, in my Christian faith is I no longer feel it necessary to believe in Jesus as it was passed on to me, and I accept it. No issues, no problems, no reviewing of that, but it's definitely evolved from a belief in, but a knowing of, an experiencing of what Jesus encouraged us to think of as the kingdom of God, which I take to be here and now, not somewhere else. Experiencing what it is to participate in I am, which is nothing other than the name of God, both in the Old Testament and actually the New Testament. And so this morning's meditation, which I shared with you, which ends with the verse from, I think it's Psalms, "Be still and know that I am God." It's that I amness of God, which I don't need to say I believe, is what Jesus was talking about. In some other way, it sounds a little bit precocious, so take no notice of this. I don't need to believe, I know something of the I amness of God. or I'm barking completely up the wrong Camino. Comments below. It doesn't say, "Be still and believe that I am God." That's the first car on the road this Sunday morning in an hour and a half. Note, it does not say, "Be still and believe that I am God." Rather, "Be still and know that I am God." So, the knowing of the I am is not a belief. It's a knowing. Come on, go with me. I've just read a verse from the New Testament, St. Paul, I think, scrawled or rather graffitied onto a distance post just back there, which has got me thinking. It says, "For those who endure until the end, they will be saved." Well, I've got news for you. It's a mistranslation. It is. You won't hear that in my church, where life is suffering. I'm sorry. No. What's that saying? That which doesn't kill you strengthens you. No, we're not going for that one either. It's as though people have got paranoia, as though life is out to get you, so you have to endure it. I suffer from pronoia, which is a condition where I expect everything to be a blessing, to work out just fine. Maybe it's just me. So the correct translation of "he who endures" should actually be "he who enjoys to the end shall be saved." You heard it here first. I've stopped for a little water break on this Sunday morning, the 4th day. And here's one of the regular signs, and that's where it's pointing to. But on this one sign, there are several things that we can think about, talk about on the way. First of all, you'll have heard probably everybody greet each other, fellow pilgrims and locals. They say "Buon Camino," good Camino, and that's a lovely thing. We're all citizens of the same place. We're citizens of the Camino, and so we all belong together, whatever the language. L'amore non si nasconde, si rivela. I don't even know what language that is. I don't think it's Spanish. I think that's Italian, so I'll say it again. L'amore non si nasconde, si rivela. And that means love is not something that you know with your head. It's something revealed to the heart. So there's Sunday morning, lesson number 1. What's this one? Toi et le ciel. Oh, this is French from Hamita or Marmite. September 22. You and the sky. Well, John likes to say, where does one end and the other begin? I'm not sure John knows really exactly how big the sky is. I certainly don't know how big the sky, the cosmos is. And the ontological question, which has come up in my book. Of course, where does consciousness begin and end? And is the cosmos that we are familiar with the only cosmos? And is that the only thing that contains consciousness? Or is the whole cosmos, which might be infinite, we don't know yet, is that contained itself within consciousness? I'll leave that one with you. And finally, with an exclamation mark, destruye tu ego, which, I think my Spanish serves me, must mean destroy your ego. No, don't be so violent. What's wrong with your ego? I mean, okay, we can be silly and forgetful and unkind at times, but I would say befriend your ego, but don't let it in the driving seat. Oh dear. I learned something very helpful from my ADHD counsellor just earlier this week, about this, and it's recognising that the ego is very noisy and seeks our attention. Maybe it's seeking dopamine hits all the time. That's perhaps why we overthink or look for new things or new experiences all the time. And well, in my case, I do. And she suggested that when a thought comes up that is unhelpful or distracting from staying in the presence, she suggests saying, well, I hear what you say, well, let's talk about it. I hear what you say. Let's talk about it later, about 5 o'clock. And so, you don't need to destroy the ego. You just need to distract it like a child tugging on mummy's skirt for sweets at the checkout. That's all it is. Destroy the ego. Don't be so violent. Toi et le ciel. You and the sky. I think I'm being a little unkind to John. He says he likes to say his favourite meditation is to look out of the window at the sky, at the immensity of it, the infinitude of it, and it immediately brings him to rest and quietens his thoughts. So absolutely all for that. Thank you, John. For myself, I don't meditate on LCL, the sky, or even the infinitude of it, which seems to be beyond imagination, really, with our finite minds. Are they finite? But I am completely enchanted by the scale and diversity and glory of our cosmos, and in our generation we're particularly fortunate in that we've had not only Hubble Space Telescope but now the James Webb Space Telescope, which is like the IMAX version of Hubble, and an extraordinary number of galaxies have become accessible to the James Webb, and of course they get shared on the internet. Did you know there's an International Space Station, CAM, and you can just log in and traverse the world from the space station, viewing it from the space station. Extraordinary. I think it circumnavigates the Earth 16 times a day. And at night, I'm sure you know this, I'm sure you've seen this, you can spot the International Space Station because, well, if I might be mistaken, I usually am about these things, but I tell myself that if there's a steady light, not a blinking light is a plane, but a completely steady light in an absolute straight arrow trajectory with no vapor trail at night, that's the International Space Station. Now, I reckon John would love that. He could live in a capsule detached from the Earth, and especially detached from people. There would have to be nobody else on the space station for John, for them to survive, or for John to survive. But he has a point. Where does your ground of being, and the sky, also, you might argue, the ground of being, where is the dividing line? Without turning this into a philosophy of mind Sunday morning talk, just very briefly, there is a very serious consideration from philosophers of mind and physicists and spiritual teachers, theologians even, that indeed not only is everything connected, but it's all a one-off. Well, no, that's not the right expression. What I mean to say is there is only one thing. There is only what Bertrand Russell calls neutral stuff. What Spinoza called substance. What the physicist David Bohm calls the implicate order. And what Rupert Spira, a fellow YouTuber, calls the light of pure knowing. And I'll just come full circle to this morning's mantra: be still and know that I am God. Notice the being comes first before the knowing, and then there is the knowing of that being. See how that works? Knowing what? Knowing that I am. Just going back to John's love of the sky and its limitlessness as an aid to meditation, or as indeed an exploration of true nature. Of course, one of his favourite sayings is, "Don't fence me in." And this is a yearning from the bottom of his heart, from when he was a boy growing up in nature. He actually grew up, the first years in the south of England, in an architect-designed house, actually. Chipperfield, I believe. I think it's in Hampshire. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So he was very much a country boy, and the big open spaces and the big open sky were his friends. John is very candid, as you know, about his other people are not his favourite. Let's just put it that way, shall we? He's always felt an outsider, a square peg in a round hole. Yes, an outsider. A sort of classic English gentleman outsider, explorer type, really. And so, don't fence me in was his watchword. So, for example, when he went to San Francisco in the footsteps of a young teacher when John was in his mid-50s, and it didn't go so well. After a few weeks, I think he was sharing a house in Mill Valley with mostly women, and as you know, John is not a big fan of talking, so they threw him out in the end, and true to his nature, he took off into the desert where there's nobody, where there's no people to talk to him. Bless him. And the same when he was in Australia. He avoided the cities and the towns, and he was, when he was a young man, talking about 20, I think, 18 or 20, his father paid for passage to Australia, and he was a cowboy on the range for some weeks or maybe even months. Don't fence me in. His hero, of course, is Roy Rogers, with his silver tassely cowboy outfit and his silver pistol by his side, riding his horse like a real man in the frontier, except pulling up into a bar, taking out his guitar and singing, accompanied by his horse Trigger, "Don't Fence Me In," which there is a famous version of, which you can listen to. I'm not going to sing it, which you can listen to on Spotify, and other platforms are available. Yes, Roy Rogers singing "Don't Fence Me In." I better be careful I don't get lost here, because I'm not paying attention to the signs. Which way, Phil? Which way? I think it's this way. So John has a very strong call to nature, or more than that, to the wide open spaces without any boundaries, without any interference from humans. Whereas I can share some of that desire not to be fenced in, at least spiritually. Well, no, actually, scrub that. I don't mean spiritually. I mean fenced in by conditioning, fenced in by what we've been told, fenced in by other people's priorities, fenced in by the media's agenda, fenced in by values of a society which change, economic values, social values, sexual values, musical values. They're all in a state of flux, and so please don't fence me in. with your judgments of how I should or anybody else should live. I have come to a great respect and fondness for my mate Peter, without him giving me a prod, and my mate Andrew giving me a prod in a bar overlooking Playa Blanca on Lanzarote about 5 or 6 years ago now. If it wasn't for them prodding me, encouraging me, I wouldn't have started this YouTube channel. And just yesterday we got to 500 members of the clan, the YouTube channel clan. So thanks for joining. What was that little word that has just eluded me? Let me just think on it a sec. You'll be familiar with the Bayeux tapestry with William the Conqueror and overcoming one in the eye for Harold. I don't think Harold was English, actually. No, this is not a history lesson. It's just come to mind. I think Harold was Scandinavian. He might have been a Viking. I might be wrong there. Please correct me. I don't know why I go off on these things. Isn't life wonderful? On the Bayeux tapestry, in Old French or Latin or whatever it was, there's a sewing, a tapestry of King William on horseback with his sword drawn, and the point is prodding his own foot soldiers. And the translation is, King William comforteth his troops. It's the sort of comfort you can do without, isn't it, really? I'm just a Walter Softy. I think we're all Walter Softies now, aren't we? Yes, please don't fence me in either, but it's a question of discarding, offloading, conditioning. You know, Lily Tomlin, American comedian, she says, when I was young I wanted to be someone, but I should have been more specific. Bon Camino. He's hardcore. I reckon he's walked probably all the way. I think so. I think he's walked about 500 kilometres. He's coming back for a sit down, maybe a chat, we'll see. Don't fence me in. This is a change of scenery, change of footpath. Off the side road, turn right, and this is a proper, it looks like very ancient Communal pathway, this. So we are walking in the footsteps of thousands of previous pilgrims now. I think 450,000 in the last year. So let's say conservatively 10 times that over the years. Now, 1 in 4.5 million pilgrims. Of course, it's completely incidental, isn't it? But in a life, it's not. For one little chispa, a spark, it's not inconsequential. And although one of only many pilgrims, is both humbling because you realise how small you are, but it's also aggrandising, if that's the right word, aggrandising. Hopefully it doesn't sound conceited, but bigs you up, going on a walk in the footsteps of many others, brothers and sisters of a like mind and like spirit, all walking the way of Saint Jacques, the Communal. In quiet, except for I can hear a brook to my right and birds all around me. Although if you notice, what do you notice? Unfortunately, all these trees and bushes, they look dead to me. We carry on. Welcome to the Sunday morning staring competition. See who gives in first. They're not budging, are they? Oh, a little glance to the side. They'll soon lose interest in me. Something much more interesting. Drink of water, perhaps, or a cafe con leche. There he's off. These, I believe, are called chestnut brown bighorns. Yep, time for coffee. You can just see behind the trees the top of the church tower, which is always a welcome sight. Not so much because of the religious connotation or wanting to go to church on a Sunday morning, which I don't. I've done that for plenty of years, 2 or 3 times on a Sunday, but don't fence me in, to borrow a phrase. The other thing that the church tower signifies, there is usually a bar or a cafe next to it, and we just pray that either or both are open on a Sunday. Let's go and see. Another of the lovely things on the Communal, especially with this lovely coloured honey stone, this looks both very old but very well maintained. There are these chapels along the way. It won't be open, unfortunately, not even this Sunday morning, but look how nice and beautifully maintained it is. And in the garden here there's a cherry tree in blossom, just to remind us that nature's got here before us. Happy Sunday. Let us see. Take 1. Poems, blessings, prayers, love notes. Let's have a look, shall we? Let's dip our hand in and just take 1. Just take 1. Let me see what this says. Let's see what this says. The road must eventually lead to the whole world. Jack Kerouac, On the Road. I started it. I never finished it. Jack Kerouac. I hope that isn't a portent for the Communal. I started it and I didn't finish it. Well, wish me luck. Suerte. I've just lit a candle here in this niche for the pilgrims. And it's very lovely that on this Sunday morning, it's about noon I think, it happens to be open to visitors, and I'm going to sit down and say a little prayer on this Sunday morning for the lovely ones, those whom I love and those who love me in Sheffield, in Sardinia, in Mexico, in London, and here too. This is a spitting image of my mate Dave, the tattooist, and he's got his own monument ahead of me. Typical. This is a delightful little village on the way, and this is a highly regarded and highly recommended stopping off point, and I've just enjoyed the local Galician speciality, pulpo, with a glass of wine, and I'm very glad of it. And on to the next and last stop for today, the fourth day. It's Sunday, the first of hopefully 3 Sundays on my Communal this time, and after a splendid, excellent, lovely, great value lunch of close your ears, octopus, pulpo and a glass of wine or two in the highly recommended and quite famous Posada del whatever it was, and it must be time for a Sunday afternoon nap. Sunday afternoon stroll after tapas, a glass of vino blanco and a siesta at a rest place, and there appears to be nobody else on this Camino this year except me and this lovely broom in bloom. I call it broom. What do you call it? This is another benefit of walking the Camino in the footsteps of other pilgrims. Here, the stream makes the Camino very boggy, but previous pilgrims have taken a detour through this wood, through this copse, and made a path easy to follow, which comes out here above the water, and so we don't get our boots muddy and we're back on dry land. Now isn't that a lesson in communal walking. Well, we're not that high, although it has been rising for the past hour, and it is still first half of March. The stream's running down the pathway, but there is snow. I'm going to refresh myself with the snow all over my face.